hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at WION.com.
Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from New York City. I'm Susan Tehrani. First, a look at this hour's latest headlines. Iran's Deputy Interior Minister on Tuesday announced the first arrests in a spate of mystery poisoning of schoolgirls that has gripped the country for the past several months. The Kremlin says it does not recognize the price cap introduced by Western countries on its oil exports. The U.S. has said the price cap aimed at driving down Moscow's earnings was working well. Protests spread across France against pension reforms. Opposition leaders want President Macron to hold a referendum or dissolve the parliament. Iraq is keen to strengthen ties with the United States, says Prime Minister Shia al-Sudani. To U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, the visiting Pentagon chief assures a continued U.S. troop presence in Iraq. NBA star Ja Morant faces a police investigation over a video posted on social media in which he appeared to brandish a firearm. We're going to start you off with some breaking news coming in from Bangladesh. A blast has been reported in Dhaka's Gulistan area. So far, 16 people are reported dead. 20 have been rushed to the Dhaka Medical College and Hospital. The blast was reported at 4:50 p.m. today, and rescue teams rushed to the spot to recover people trapped under the rubble. This is, of course, a developing story, and we are joined by Nazarul Islam, a senior journalist from Dhaka, Bangladesh, to give us the latest on what is going on the ground. Nazarul, thank you so much for joining us on WION. Do we know who was responsible for the incident that took place just recently?
Yeah, thank you very much. It has been a tragic incident. Unfortunately, I must say that there were two other blasts, one in Chittagong and one in Dhaka on Saturday and Sunday, and this is the third incident of blast. But certainly, police or the investigator could not so far made it clear that what are the reasons behind this sort of explosion. But generally speaking, people in the investigative chain, they are suspecting that electric malfunction might be the cause on the air conditioning that might have been the reason behind the explosion like this. And I saw the police commissioner of this Dhaka Metropolitan Police was saying that they suspect there was no link with the militant fever or something like that. Still, the case is being investigated by the police and other agencies.
And Nazrul, can you tell us about the locality of this incident, the significance of the area that it took place in?
Yeah, this area is very crowded. It's a business hub. It's called Gulistan. That was previously the main junction of all transportation from here to other districts. Now this has turned to be a very important business district. People come, go there, and there are many offices, shops, business centers all around this area. And also there has been a bus stand. I mean, the buses travel from within the city.
Right, and it seems that rescue operations were immediately underway right after this blast. You mentioned that there were two other blasts during the weekend. I know that we can't really jump into any conclusions right now at this point, but what is the situation on the ground right now? Do you think that, of course, it's extremely tragic on the one hand, but do you think that there is a sense of uncertainty and terror among the people?
Yeah, the scene on the ground is very, very sketchy because the firefighters, police, and other agencies, people from the other agencies are still looking for whether there are any survivors in the debris. And at the Dhaka Medical College Hospital, where I talked to the people, they say that the hospital is crammed with so many patients at a time, and the authorities were forced to reinforce their human resources at this health facility because they are now treating at least 100 people who suffered injuries at the blast. And more than 100 people are given first aid at this facility. This is how the situation is in this area.
Nazrul Islam, thank you so much for that update from Dhaka, Bangladesh. We'll be keeping an eye on this story very closely. Of course, it's developing by the minute. A tragic incident indeed. Many lives lost and countless people also injured. Thank you for that. China has put out a strong warning against the United States that conflict would be inevitable unless Washington changes course. Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang said today that the U.S. should change its distorted attitude towards China or, quote, conflict and confrontation will follow. Take a listen.
声称要经营中国，但不寻求冲突。实际上，美方所谓的竞争，就是全方位的遏制、打压，就是你死我活的零和博弈。如果美方不踩刹车，继续沿着错误的道路狂飙下去，再多的护栏也挡不住脱轨翻车，陷入对抗冲突。
China's foreign minister also defended Beijing's stance on the war in Ukraine and its close ties with Russia. China said an invisible hand was pushing for the escalation of the war in Ukraine to serve certain geopolitical agendas. He, however, did not specify who he was referring to. During a nearly 2-hour presser, Qin made a robust defense of China's wolf warrior diplomacy. The new Chinese foreign minister also warned of Beijing's red lines.
Regrettably, efforts to persuade peace and promote talks have been consistently undermined. It seems that there is an invisible hand pushing for the protraction and escalation of the conflict, using the Ukrainian crisis to serve certain geopolitical agendas. Asia, our Asia-Pacific region, should become an arena for win-win cooperation and not a chessboard for geopolitics. No Cold War should be allowed to be repeated in Asia. The Ukrainian crisis should not be repeated in Asia. The Taiwan question is the core of the core interest of China, the bedrock of the political foundation of China-US relations, and the first red line that must not be crossed in China-US relations. The United States has an unshakable responsibility for causing the Taiwan question. The reason we are talking to the United States about the Taiwan issue is to ask the United States not to interfere in China's internal affairs.
Earlier in the day, in a rare direct criticism of the United States, Chinese President Xi Jinping accused Washington of leading a policy of containment, encirclement, and suppression of China. President Xi also accused his country's private sector to boost innovation and become more self-reliant. China-U.S. ties have hit a new low in recent times, be it over Taiwan, potential support to Russia, or the economy. China and the United States are often found at odds with each other. Recently, China's technology ambitions have been hit with a raft of restrictions by U.S. and its Western allies. Beijing, for its part, has doubled down on the need to shift away from imports for sectors perceived as vital to national security. Okay, well, for more on this, we are joined by Edward P. Joseph, Senior Fellow at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies. He's also a foreign policy analyst. He's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Edward, good to see you again. Here we are with China and the U.S. Once again, this time, China did not hold back, and its new foreign minister seems to be more hawkish than anyone, at least with his rhetoric. What do you make of all of this?
I think this is a concern, and this should be a concern not just in Washington, but in capitals around the world. What we see here is, of course, China's attempt to frame its policies exactly as the opposite of what they are. So you see Xi Jinping setting the tone with his speech where he directly, not obliquely, but directly accuses the United States of suppression of China. And you see the foreign minister, as you say correctly, Qin Gang, going into detail about this, when in fact it's Chinese expansionism in Asia that has worried so many of China's neighbors and tightened the relationship and, in fact, the reliance on the United States as a security guarantor. So we see that element of this, of China going on the attack as a way of disguising its own expansionist policies across Asia, and that includes, of course, the border, the very sensitive border issues with India. And at the same time, we also see the accusation that it is the United States that is this invisible hand. That's the reference Qin Gang is making, when in fact it is China's support of Russia that makes the continuing Russian aggression possible. Please.
So how should the United States react right now?
Well, we see in Washington that there is a very strong consensus across the political spectrum. So there's really no daylight, no difference between the way Democrats and Republicans approach the perception of a threat from China. Now, the reality is that we live in an interconnected world, and the United States does not seek or need any confrontation or conflict with China. That would be terribly destructive. But the realities are very complex. We have to understand this reality that China is exploiting Russia's aggression in Ukraine. We have to understand that it, on the one hand, talks about a peace plan, but the reality is that China benefits from this war. How? In two ways. Number one, because it's a distraction of the United States from the threat of Chinese expansionism in Asia. So that's number one. The United States is, and with its NATO allies and EU partners, is preoccupied providing this defense against Russian aggression to Ukraine. That's number one. The other is that it creates dependency on the part of Russia towards China. So Russia, Vladimir Putin has to come in a mode of weakness, of beseeching China for its support, critical support, to provide components, for example, for critical elements that Russia cannot obtain because of sanctions, to buy oil at discounted prices. So what the United States, the way it should react, Susan, it's a great question, is to work with all those who are threatened by Chinese expansionism, including India, for a unified stance. That's what the Quad is about, the policy with India, Australia, Japan, and the United States, and other steps to ensure that China understands that this attempt to divide and conquer will not work. And the other element is, of course, for countries to understand how China is exploiting the war in Ukraine and to have a unified stance against Russian aggression and take this tactic away from China. Please.
Thank you. Edward P. Joseph, Senior Fellow at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies. Thank you for those insights, and we look forward to speaking to you again very soon on WION.
Likewise. Thank you very much.
North Korea has warned the U.S. against any move to shoot down one of its test missiles, adding that it would be considered a declaration of war. The statement released by Kim Yoo-young, the sister of leader Kim Jong-un, also blamed the joint military exercises between the United States and South Korea for the growing tensions. She also hinted that North Korea could fire more missiles into the Pacific Ocean. North Korea also criticized the joint drills conducted by the United States and South Korea. Earlier, the United States deployed its nuclear-capable B-52 bombers for a joint drill with South Korea fighter jets. The two countries are also set to conduct more than 10 days of large-scale military exercises. South Korea's Unification Ministry says the joint exercises are a message to Pyongyang and its reckless nuclear missile developments. Russia is opposing Indian-born business executive A.J. Banga's nomination as World Bank chief by U.S. President Joe Biden. According to Russian state-owned news agency TASS, Russia has launched a campaign to keep Biden's nominee away from the top job. The report said Russian officials at the bank are in talks with other friendly countries to find an alternative to Banga. Roman Marshavin, Russia's representative on the board of the World Bank Group, did not mention a specific candidate. He did, however, say the list already has 15 names. That includes Russian financiers, economists, several former finance ministers, and heads of central banks of Russia-friendly nations. The U.S. has always chosen the World Bank president since the creation of the World Bank, and the leadership of the International Monetary Fund is suggested by European countries. Russia's opposition to Banga as World Bank boss comes at odd times. The call coincides with the World Bank announcing that it had stopped all programs in Russia. This was in response, of course, to the invasion of Ukraine. However, the process of nominating candidates is not over. The member countries have until March 29th to nominate an alternative candidate. But many experts say a challenger would stand no chance. Banga's nomination was lauded by the U.S., Europe, and a number of other countries. If elected, A.J. Banga would be the first World Bank president born and raised in India. A.J. Banga had an astonishing career as a business executive working for various U.S. corporations in India. This includes Nestle, PepsiCo, and Citigroup. He moved eventually to the United States, where he became CEO of MasterCard and a U.S. citizen. In a major discovery by Mexican authorities, 343 migrants, including 103 minors, were found inside an abandoned truck trailer in the eastern Mexican state of Veracruz. Authorities discovered the trailer on a highway without a driver. It was outfitted with fans, a partially ventilated roof, and structures that created a second level inside the trailer. According to the National Migration Institute, the children will be put into custody of Veracruz's family service system, while the other migrants will be processed to determine their legal status. However, this is not the first time. There have been several cases in the recent past as well. For example, on January 26th, 28 minors were found inside a crowded truck by Mexican authorities in the northern state of Chihuahua, while 57 unaccompanied minors aged between 14 and 16 from Guatemala were found at a checkpoint near the U.S.-Mexico border, all without proper migration permits. They were deported by Mexico at the Guatemalan Air Force facility in Guatemala City. And then on January 20th, Mexican migrant welfare agencies rescued members of a Colombian family trapped at the U.S.-Mexico border river. A couple and their underage daughter were rescued after being stranded on rocks in the middle of Rio Bravo when they tried to reach the United States. They had symptoms of hyperthermia and were taken to the hospital for checkups. Four U.S. citizens have been kidnapped in Mexico. The Americans had just crossed over into Mexico when gunmen fired at the vehicle that they were traveling in and directed them into another vehicle. Since then, there is no information about their whereabouts. The Mexican and U.S. authorities are trying to locate them. The four U.S. citizens were traveling in a white minivan with North Carolina license plates, and according to officials, they are believed to have crossed into Mexico from Texas to buy medicine, but were caught in the shootout, which killed at least one Mexican citizen. Take a listen.
An investigation and intelligence group of federal and state institutions has been established. It has maintained communication with the United States to process the information on the case that will allow the location of the American citizens and the probable perpetrators.
Photographs from the scene show a white minivan sitting on the side of the street with the driver's side window shot and all of the doors open.
From the first moment, communication has been established between the various federal and state agencies to deal with the criminal event. We found two vehicles with the bullet impacts, one with a South Carolina registration plate.
The FBI has offered $50,000 in rewards for the safe return of the four U.S. citizens and the arrest of those involved in the suspected kidnapping.
We are closely following the assault and kidnapping of 4 U.S. citizens in Matamoros, Mexico. These sorts of attacks are unacceptable. Our thoughts are with the families of these individuals, and we stand ready to provide all appropriate consular assistance. U.S. law enforcement is in touch with Mexican law enforcement.
The U.S. State Department has re-highlighted their warnings to Americans against traveling to Mexico's Tamaulipas. It is common for Texans to visit the area to visit family, attend medical appointments, or shop as the two states share borders.
We're standing ready to provide all appropriate consular assistance. We do also remind Americans about the existing travel guidance when it comes to this particular part of Mexico. The travel advisory for Tamaulipas State remains at level 4. Do not travel. We encourage Americans to heed that advice.
Over the past decade, due to gang violence, thousands of Mexicans have disappeared just in Tamaulipas. Shootouts in Matamoros, where the kidnapping took place, was so bad on the day of the kidnapping that the U.S. consulate had issued alerts about the dangers, and local authorities also warned people to shelter in place. Thank you for staying with us and watching WION Live Broadcast from New York City. I'm Susan Tehrani. I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Meanwhile, don't go away. More news and headlines coming up next, only on WION World is One.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes,